Well, look who's here. It's Ron Yengich, back from his trip away. Apologies to those people we didn't forewarn that we weren't going to do a Bingham Boys podcast last week. And I did get a couple emails from our loyal fan base out there. When I say a couple, I mean it. It was a couple. But they were curious where we were and what's going on. And now we find ourselves, Ron, you and I, where are we, Bill? Is this South Salt Lake? Or where are we?
South Salt Lake.
South Salt Lake. Then why is Sugar House Vodka 4 blocks away to the west?
Got me.
And a park 9 blocks away to the east. Ron,
well, I mean, some people also call Utah Zion. So, I mean, it's traditional that we misname locales.
Well, okay. Well, wherever speaking of Sugar House, I remember I lived in Sugar House, really the proper area, many, many years ago. What was Sugar House? Replete with, do you remember the fortune tellers and the gypsies used to be on the road up there?
I represented
right
the gypsies.
Downtown, yeah.
Oh,
you did?
Yeah, I represented, Miller Marks was the king of the gypsies. And I represented the Marks family for a long, long, long time. And, I really loved them as people. I mean, really good people. And oppressed people. The Romani are repressed all over the world. But, they were always in trouble. Do you know the great writer A.J. Liebling?
Yeah, I do.
Well,
boxing. He wrote
wrote the boxing, but I've got the wrong guy. The writer's name, I think, is Mitchell. It won't come to me. This is one thing I hate about getting old. He wrote, this guy, great writer, he wrote an expose about the gypsy people in New York City in about 1939-40. And it really is a beautifully written story about these people that live in New York. And like a lot of the gypsy people here, they're involved in selling cars and jewelry and all kinds of other stuff and in trouble a lot. But my brother told me about that because I was representing the gypsies before he died. And I read that story. I've got to get the name right. I'm sorry. I'll find out for next time. Because if you want to read a great story about a people and who they really are, it's just a wonderful story. It's one of those old things in the New Yorker or type where it is so beautifully written, even if you're not interested in the subject, which I was, you just have to finish the article. I mean, it's that good. But anyway, yeah, I did. And they were really good people. I got invited to the Miller Marks' son got married, and I got invited to the marriage and the ceremony. It was wild. I mean, you talk about Greeks and Italians and Mexicans and other people who put on a good wedding. The gypsies take no second place to them.
Good for them.
Yeah.
I never knew any firsthand. Saw the women, luring you inside on Sugar House. Now it's like where Hopkins Brewing is and stuff like that. No one remembers. But anyway, just up there on the street.
Can I just say, what was the name of the little bar, the real little tap house? Tap room. Yeah, that was a great place to go.
Yeah, that was the little chalet that sat off the street a little bit. Anyway. I don't think it had much more than a bar and a few seats on the side because it wasn't very wide.
No, I think maybe seated 20 at the max. But it was I used to go there because I lived for a time over on right by Westminster. I had a great little house there when I was single, and I would go there and have a few beers, and then I'd go up to Highland Drive and hit those bars, that were up there.
My one great memory of that place was on a Saturday. We were on a Lumpy's bus. Lumpy's, which is now Brickyard Bar, used to run buses up to the Ute games, and then we'd traverse back and forth because you didn't have to park or anything. So on the way back, Utah won. Have no idea who they played, but we somehow ended up on whatever that is, 11th East, going down. And Lumpy just stands up and says, commands the bus driver to stop and pull over. Well, he couldn't, so he parallel parked the bus on that street. Somehow, it's just an amazing piece of parking that just still sticks out in my mind. And the whole bus emptied into the tap room, which was already had a few the people that are sitting there like, who are these people, these invaders? We walked in, and Lumpy bought everybody a beer and a pickled egg.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was in celebration.
Of Utah's victory.
Yeah, of Utah's victory. There we took off. That's
awesome.
But anyway, up around the corner from there, Sugar House Park, I used to jog up there back when jogging was fun. Like you'd smoke a cigarette while you jogged. That was really something. And later on, spent time in the park cruising as a lot of people did. Last big memory there was a concert, though, about this time of year, and I remember it because it has something to do with Labor Day. It was a Pete Seeger concert, and you told me Pete Seeger's story a while back. Didn't you have something tied to Pete Seeger?
Yeah, I mean, I was on the committee that held that concert.
Was it that show?
Yeah, it was Joe Hill's. It was he was executed by the state of Utah on November 19th, 1915, and it was around that time. It may have been around Labor Day because they're both close. And I was on that committee that put it on, and I think I mentioned that when we talked about Helen Papanicholas, who I saw at that concert. Really met her for any amount of time and was able to talk to her. But yeah, Pete got there. Somebody dropped him off, and I was on the stage. We were setting everything up, and somebody said, "Can somebody go help Pete?" So I went over to help him, and I actually got to carry his banjo. And he didn't want anything, didn't want to drink, didn't want anything. He just said, "I just need to rest." And he looked over, and there was a tree there, and a shady tree, and he said, "I just want to go lay down there. Just, have people kind of
put my knapsack down and put my
And that's
hobo sack
exactly
down.
what he did. I mean, it was like, this is right out of who he was. But I got to carry his banjo over while he laid down, and then we had somebody stand over there to keep people away from him until he was rested. But that was a wonderful concert, and it was a really good time.
I was there. I saw some Kennecott guys there. Gerald Cole, little shout out to him. I know he listens to this, but he was at the same.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he's been a union guy forever, so no surprise there. So he wasn't killed. Joe Hill wasn't killed on labor. That has nothing to do with why they formed labor.
No, I think that we just did it when we could get the permit to do it between Labor Day and...
No. Why was Labor Day chosen as Labor Day? Was there something...
Oh, May 1st has always historically been a day for labor, but it goes back to this. The communists in Europe... May Day was their big day, and that was the workers' place. Pope Pius XII, when he excommunicated anybody from the Catholic Church who was a communist, he deigned May 1st to be one of the feast days for St. Joseph, who was a carpenter, and they call it St. Joseph the Worker Day. And so he did that to kind of counter communism. And so that's a big part of why it's that day. I don't know if it's the only reason, but I'm going to look it up.
All right.
Because it's interesting to do.
Well, for those who don't know, and there's so many because we just lose track of everything. A little over 100 years ago, what was it, 112 years ago approximately, right? Utah was a different place, and labor was moving on here. What did Joe Hill, who did he kill? What did he do?
Well, Joe Hill is alleged to have killed a man named A.G. Morrison and his son. Mr. Morrison had a store over...
Morrison Meats, maybe?
No, not that. But he had a store. It was a little store, grocery store, over where the Kia dealership is on about 8th South and West Temple, that area, which was a residential area at that time. And he was robbed. He had been a former police officer, and he was robbed and had been robbed a number of other times. Two men entered the store. One man stayed out. There were three of them. I'll simplify it. They came in, and a man said, "We've got you now." And
to Morrison?
To Morrison. And Morrison's son went for a revolver that he had hidden, and the guy shot Morrison and the son. So they both died. Morrison had been a cop, and he had told a number of people that he was afraid. It never came out who he was, but it was probably a guy that had just been released from prison named Frank Z. Wilson. And Morrison had arrested him, and Wilson was a bad guy. And people think that who he saw was Wilson or one of his compatriots, and they had been kind of looking at the store. So he told a friend of his who was a cop about that he was concerned about it. Anyway, Morrison gets shot and he's killed on the same night. At about the same time, Joe Hill ends up at a doctor's office who he knew. He was a socialist doctor. Name escapes me, I apologize. On what is now 39th South and State Street. The house was there. I haven't been down there for a while. And Hill went to his house and he had a gunshot wound. This doctor treated him, and then in the papers the next day, of course, big headlines and so on and so forth, to make what is becoming a real long story, but an interesting one in my opinion, short. Ultimately, the police fall to Joe Hill. They find him. He's living with a family in Murray, and they go and arrest him. When they arrest him, they overdo it and they shoot him. They injure his hand very badly. Well, Joe Hill was an itinerant IWW, Wobbly, singer, songwriter, radical. And he had been here for a while. He had been on a strike on the railroad in the western part of Utah, and he had traveled around a lot. He was a vagabond.
He wasn't from here, though. No, he came from the east, I believe, right?
He's from Sweden.
Originally.
Yeah, and so at that time, the police fall to him, and pretty soon they put away this theory that Morrison was killed by people who knew him. There was another eyewitness to this, and that was Morrison's other son, who becomes a real kind of tragic figure in this, because he gives a semi-identification of Hill, and it's on the basis of that, and really poor police tactics, even for that time. Hill ultimately goes to trial and is convicted.
Circumstantially, right?
Yeah, circumstantially, yeah. But the other thing is, Hill had this gunshot wound to answer for. And he said, I'm not going to tell anybody how I got the gunshot. It's nobody's business. I didn't do the shooting. It had nothing to do with the shooting. And the statement was that he was protecting someone. The theory became that Hill was protecting a woman's honor. And that's why he wouldn't say who he was with. A lot of people said that was BS. Based on Hill's history, that's kind of understandable. Hill had lived with a rough crowd. These were tough men, and Wobblies were not averse to tactics beyond striking. I mean, they would break, they would monkey wrench, if you will, company stuff to get their point across. They weren't afraid of threatening, because they were used to being threatened all over the country and ultimately the world. And so as a result of that, he goes to trial. He won't testify. He's a real jerk in court. I've represented guys like this. They're hard to control. He wanted to talk all the time when it wasn't his turn. He made speeches, basically from defense counsel table. He was his own worst enemy in the courtroom, and the jury convicted him. And that became a cause celeb, because Utah was even at that time a very conservative place. It had become that Utah wanted to be conservative. They wanted to be known as good Americans because they were overcoming the prejudice of the LDS Church that was nationwide. And so the theory and ultimately the myth became that the Mormons killed him. They just wanted to kill this radical because they weren't hesitant to play rough in Utah and other places with radical vagabond labor people. A number were killed within the same time that Hill's incident occurred, including a guy named Frank Little up in Washington State. And so that became the myth. The myth was, just as Joe Baez sang, the copper bosses killed you, Joe. Hill was supposed to have been involved in the 1912 strike up in Bingham, but nobody can really verify that. It's possible he was there. It's possible he wasn't. So anyway, he becomes the cause célèbre for the labor movement. He is, in fact, effectively the American labor movement's Christ figure. He shot and executed, and the things that swirled around it resonate today, because in that strike, the National Guard was called in by Governor
in 1912 to Bingham, right?
Yes, to Bingham, and I think we've come to the agreement that 2 people were killed there, but a number were wounded when the National Guard broke that strike. It was one of the uses of the National Guard that was castigated, and it wasn't the only place that they used the National Guard, was it?
No, well, first in Bingham, I know a little bit about it because of my family history. my name, John, comes from the leader of the Cretan strikers, a good friend of my father's. His name was John Leventis.
Right.
His son, Mike, was my godfather. My dad and John Leventis, he owned the Acropolis, what was the name of it? The Acropolis Coffee House in Bingham, up in Copperfield. He was a Cretan, so that's a place where particularly Cretans gathered.
Right.
And when push came to shove up there in the canyon, there was 5,000 miners in the 5,000 in that mine then, right?
Including my one grandfather
Yeah.
and his cousin. My Italian grandfather and mother didn't get here till 1920.
Well, the strikers were primarily Greeks and the Italians and what were called the Austrians, which were Serbs and Croats.
Serbs and Croats and Slovenes.
Yeah, so they were the more put upon in terms of taking the leadership point on the strike. Greeks generally, well, there's the subset of the Greeks are the Cretans, and there's some debate, between you know what, they love each other, right? But there's certainly some rivalry between Crete and Greece in terms of like more authentic or more original or whatever,
Yeah, sure.
all kinds of stuff. And the Cretans certainly have a wild streak, more so than the mainlanders, and to a large degree, because they were just at 1912 they were still under Turkish dominion.
Right.
Okay, they didn't get freed up from Turkey till about 1913. Yeah. And that includes my grandfather's father, who was still, playing around over there in Greece. But it was the Cretans who took point for everybody. The Greeks were the largest. The Cretans led the Greeks.
And there was some pushback against a guy named, is it Leonidas Sclerus?
Sclerus, yeah. So he was a labor agent.
He was a labor agent, and he was a labor agent primarily for the Greeks, as I recall.
Yeah, each ethnicity had their own.
But the Cretans, he used those Greeks as strikebreakers. That was part of the gig. That's one of the things when he tried to do that.
He tried to bring a group of strikebreakers up into the canyon, and the Cretans and the Greeks that were already there said, No way, Jose.
And everybody else joined in.
My grandfather, I point to his pictures, like in Helen's book you mentioned. No good son of a bitch. He take the money from the Greek boys.
Yeah.
And he would talk in a thick Cretan accent like that. They took our money. Which meant that, these guys, 5,000 of them making 50 cents a day.
Yeah, they're not making
50 cents a day.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the major contributor to industry in Utah having a payroll of $2,500 a day? That's the size of a good sized cafe or restaurant in Salt Lake. It seems like, right? $2,500 a day. So and that employed 5,000 people, and that was too much to give from the point of the company.
No.
And those guys were just asking for another penny or a nickel or dime, right?
Right.
So they went on strike. The strikebreakers came. They were troubled, and right away, the Cretans and the Greeks, these kids didn't know. The strikebreakers had no idea. They were just going to work.
Right.
They didn't know. There's no way they're going to take on their countrymen. So they pretty soon either dropped it or joined.
Joined, yeah.
So what really stopped it, though, was the Greek priest that went out there. And that was okay, if you say to be nice, we'll play nice. But meanwhile, there'd already been a death or two. And my dad used to tell me, like, when he was young, up in the higher peaks, not the peaks, the canyons, the gulches, and so on. You could still see the encampments where they'd put the cribbings up, and they were ready to fight.
No,
they were firing downhill. They had the upper ground. They were going to.
There's a lot of research that's been done on it, and the old articles in the Tribune, the Deseret News, and Salt Lake Telegram tell the story. They tell it from the version of particularly the Governor Spry and those people about why they had to send it in. And there is all of the anti-immigrant buzzwords and name-calling that you will see now by some of Donald Trump's supporters and Donald Trump and that no-good SOB Miller about why we've got to get rid of anybody that is dark skinned.
Well, you've got 5,000 guys striking for 50 cents a day, call out the National Guard.
Well, and
you have, in 2021, you had a couple thousand knuckleheads with American flags and pounding down the walls of the United States Capitol and beating cops and killing one or two and hurting people and gouging eyes out, and you don't call the National Guard. And it's pretty easy to see why a whole bunch of people that have heard these stories or lived through them and hear wherever their backgrounds are, you can easily see the disparity between who gets bonked on the head in this country and who doesn't. And it tends to be kind of foreigners and brown people, you know?
Well, yeah, and,
Black
or
and
poor
brown,
people.
Yeah, poor too.
You know, the thing about it is that when you bring that up, I mean, if I had hair, I would have
I remember you with hair. Don't say this.
I would have.
Don't make me feel old.
No, I would have a mohawk because it would go up like that. Because the truth of the matter is that we continue to forget that none of this stuff has not been done before, except with one big difference. There are good people out there that are in power who said it wasn't right to call in the National Guard in 1912. It isn't right to do that type of stuff. That isn't part of who we are, and it took a while to do it. You have knowledge about what happened in Colorado. There were other places where the same thing happened, where the National Guard was called in. But over time and fairly quickly, there was pushback against that. And it wasn't simply along party lines. It was along the idea of that's not who we are as Americans.
We take time doing that, though. I mean, when I, and you were certainly probably among them too, why didn't we call the National Guard on 2021? And people are now saying, like, what the hell is this? We called out the National Guard, 3 cars burned in L.A., and Christine Noem says that she saved the city, or he saved the city, that 7 million or 10 million people by calling out the National Guard who were not needed there. Ron, so then the next step was L.A., then Washington, D.C., and then it's going to be some other city. And it's the same thing that happened. It happened in Washington, same process. It happened in Washington, and oh, well, that's just a one-off. Happens in Bingham Canyon, Utah, that's a one-off. And by the way, there's other cities we don't even bother to mention. And then we get to Colorado. And these are 1 and 2 years apart until finally the explosion point comes and people wake up. And that parallel between what happened 112 years ago and today is not so remote.
No, it isn't remote at all. I mean, strong men act strong as long as they're not in the path of the bullets, okay? And that's what Governor Spry did. And Spry wanted to look tough. Remember, at this point, 1913, 1914, World War I, the Great War had started. We're just off the war in Mexico, the revolution in Mexico. And the people that have money and the people with power, the billionaireocracy of today, they're concerned because people are finally waking up to, as Joe Hill sang in one of the parodies he wrote, about pie in the sky capitalism. You know, you're gonna get yours in the near by and by. And it was a parody of a Christian hymn that related to the common worker. These guys are selling you a bill of goods so that they can keep you down. So you betcha they're going to talk about Christianity. They're going to talk. I mean, this is 1908 when he starts this. They're going to tell you all about this stuff so you can wait for what you'll get after you're dead. You deserve it now. You're the one that is making the money for these people. And that hasn't changed. And that's the problem with Mr. Tesla and the rest of those people who are billionaires that can fire people at will, not being concerned about that 50 cents a day they're getting and the 1 penny cent that a raise they want, or the benefits they've gained through unions. The international unions that have represented them in the government process before, they want that in their pocket, even though they don't need it. And that is exactly where we are today. That's where where are we going next? Donald Trump has made clear. He's going to your old hometown, Chicago.
Yeah. That's kind of, I lived in Chicago in 1981. I love Chicago. I was a Chicago fan, at least of the teams, the Bears because of Butkus and Gale Sayers in that era. Baseball because of Sonny Roberts and being a boy living there. I played for the Cubs. But I lived in Chicago in 81. And in 81, there were, and this, I'm checking my math here and my presidential history, I'm certain Ronald Reagan was the president.
I'm going to confirm that.
And he was a Republican conservative president. 1981, there were 876 murders in Chicago. 876. I remember. It was, it was pretty It was on the news. It's such a high number. You know, I don't remember. I think the year before was slightly higher, and the year after a little bit more, whatever. It was about peaking then. 70s might have been more, which was also Nixon years. But this year, there have been 188 so far. That's a 35% decline from the year prior. There's the crime that the president is committed. The crime that's being committed is that the president of the United States wants to use, again, the National Guard as a gendarme or whatever, enforcement policy, policeman for the streets of America that doesn't need to be there. The crime is not out of hand in Chicago. It's a major urban city. No two ways about it. They're all pretty much there, but it's not the worst case because I think New Orleans, a red state, Arkansas, in a red state, Arkansas, the state, and many places have much higher. But the reality is Chicago. I love the people there. They're going to be defined about this. It's bullshit. There's no reason to call them out except for to set the stage as these other things were setting the stage for 100 years ago, the next one, and the next one, until somebody somewhere in a city stands up like the Joe Hills and the Louis Ticas in Colorado and says enough.
No, I think that's happening now.
There's going to be martyrdom coming.
But the one thing that is clear, and the argument is a solid argument, is 876, 80, 10, 8 is too many killings in America. We have gun violence everywhere, and we've got to stop it. But we don't need the National Guard. We do need some legislation will help with that, and everybody starts screaming about the Second Amendment. But we've got to decide. We've got to decide in this country how we're going to deal with crime. And a lot of the crime in Chicago is on the south side of Chicago, not all of it. The south side of Chicago, which is a very poor area, and predominantly black. But here's the other thing about it. The city keeps moving south. I think I mentioned this in another one of the podcasts. I stayed accidentally because I misinformed my secretary. I'm gonna take the blame about where I wanted to stay in Chicago last year. And this is
because you're a White Sox fan.
No,
you wanted to stay closer to the old Comiskey.
Well, I would rather be there than the evil Cubs. But that's the point. The city has now moved down from the Loop and along the
Lake Michigan.
Lake Michigan. Yeah. You know, it's past the art museums and all that. Yeah. It's equidistant with Grant Park. These are areas that have traditionally, where this is to the west, have been bad areas. These are good areas now. They built a new basketball arena for the women's NBA, the WNBA team, and DePaul University now has their arena down there. And you look at that, well, they are not doing enough for the people that are now being moved out of their homes. And so there are problems that need to be solved. But we don't ever solve those problems. And even state and local government don't. And so that's why Trump gets this attitude that he can solve them with the National Guard. We don't need the National Guard. We need better housing. We need better jobs. And we need more on the street police officers. And this is what they say: to control neighborhood crime by being in neighborhoods themselves and getting known. And then the other thing is, as always, we need better law enforcement in the sense that we need treatment facilities for people with drug problems, and we need to help poor people. Well, what is Donald Trump going to say to all of that?
He's going to say, I'm going to do what my daddy did.
Yeah,
my dad kicked poor people out onto the street when he was a slumlord in New York, and this is how we made our money. And never mind the fact that Woody Guthrie would write a song about it because he happened to live in one of Fred Trump's tenements at the time. Got kicked out on the street. Now, I don't know the song, but Woody Guthrie wrote a song about how Trump kicked him out. I don't think Donald Trump's the guy that really gives a shit about what happens in the city, other than how you can buy a piece of ground and exploit it and then say you're special.
I think he wrote the song Pretty Boy Floyd, which is kind of about that.
Is that it?
But I don't know. But in point of fact, what is he going to do? He's going to act tough because everything about him is being a tough guy, including, change the subject just a touch, he and his buddy, Commandant Klink, aka
Which one?
aka Donald Trump, has added his friend Mike E. Lee, Robert E. Lee
Oh,
Jr.
God.
on board, because they're going to change the Department of Defense, the name of it, back to the Department of War.
Yeah.
And do you know when we changed that? It was
I
because
don't know when or why. I'm guessing after World War I is what I'm thinking, but I don't know.
close. I mean, it was deemed the Department of War because we had just come off of the war, the Revolutionary War.
That long ago, okay.
And it was changed to the Department of Defense when? It was when America was at its height as the people. We were the people that brought peace to the world. In 1947, the year before the United Nations Declaration of Rights, Human Rights, was enacted, it was at that time that we didn't want to be perceived as a warring nation. We'd been through World War I and World War II. Really, it's one war. And we had been successful in saving the world, along with our allies, from Nazism and fascism and the type of things that we as Americans loathe. Strong men, and it wasn't women at the time. They can't write any of the heat for this. Strong men who wanted to be kings again. And we were opposed to that, right? And so we decided, and part of it was they had to reorganize all of this stuff because America was so wealthy at the time and expanding so much. The thought process partly was, we don't want to be known as a warring nation. We want to let everybody know we'll defend ourselves and we'll defend our allies, which of course Donald Trump isn't doing with the Ukraine and blaming Europeans for all the problems that have occurred. I'm going to show you how tough I am. I'm going to change the name of the Department of Defense.
Do you remember the name of our very first, we didn't know what the hell we're doing, and probably still don't regarding podcasting, but the first one, Bill listened to the story and he titled it Legerdemain.
Yep.
Remember the
I do
first
remember
podcast?
the first one we did.
So that was it, and that's just a little bit of what's going on, because the guy that said that I will stop all the wars, I'll end all the wars, is now naming the Department of Defense as a war department, sending troops, our money into American cities, not for defense, but for some show of force and field. Sinking a craft yesterday in the waters of Venezuela, not that they were up to any good, but it's not supposed to happen in international waters. No. And we're getting kind of aggressive with the little guys. Isn't that funny how a bully acts like that? No. And then the Tea Party with Xi and Xiaoping and Putin is taking place over in Asia somewhere, and Trump didn't get invited. He's all pissed off at that.
Well, why wouldn't they invite him? Because those guys understand. I believe this in my heart. They understand that the American people really don't want to support Russia. They don't want to support China in China's supporting Russia in the war against Ukraine. Donald Trump may not want to stand up against Russia, but those people are standing for them outright, and they're not going to do anything to help America in this. They want to isolate America, and Donald Trump is doing everything that he can to see that America is isolated and is weak. And that's happening. But he's doing it in the primeval.
Can I ask you something? You're very well, known in this town for lots of things. Do you think that that's a strong business strategy, to isolate yourself, to be seen as weak, to mock your enemies, to degrade your friends, to do everything that they teach you not to do in management school, to do all that and be president? How does this work?
Well, I don't know. I mean, my law partner, Earl Zeiss, and my old law partner, Brad Rich, if they were here, would say, don't ask him questions about what's economically feasible, and they would be right. But I know this. I know this much.
No, I'm just talking about a managerial practice.
You just same thing. I'm a poor manager, but I just know this much. Common sense says when you turn on your friends and you support your enemies, you're going to get the shit kicked out of you on both sides. And that's what he has done. Excuse my language there, but it's a fact. If you're playing a game and you decide to sell out your own team so that the other team can win, your own team is going to get rid of you, and that other team will only accept you as long as the game is still being played. And then when the game is over, they're going to ridicule you and do the same to you. And the game isn't up for Trump yet, but it's coming. And I think that the saddest part of all of this is that there are some people that just refuse to accept the fact that we are worse off today, which is September 3rd, 2025, than we were when he took office again in January.
Not even close when you look at what we used to call facts. When you used to look at data supposedly constructed by people you could trust, and armies of them, to give you and the whole world an outlook that was accurate and trustworthy, and he got rid of them all in favor of people who would write his own set of facts, his own scorecard, his own cheat card in golf, and then be able to brag about it and say obtuse things like, we've never been better, the price of gas is $1.99, eggs have never been lower, I learned a new word called groceries. My God, have you ever heard of that before? It's an amazing word, groceries. Let's all say it out loud.
Eggs come and they're kind of round.
They're kind of round. That's the thing. And
just
some of them are brown. And did you know that? And so he's managed to get people to believe statement without fact and not trust people that actually bore the facts because of whatever reason they were.
Well, part of it is that he understands that our attention span
2 weeks.
It's 7 minutes. So every one of these things that he throws out there that everybody wants to run down and find out about takes their eye off the ball, while he and his family, reliable reporting indicates that they probably made $3.5 billion just on this term based upon his crypto. This comes from Fox Business News. $3.5 billion since he's been president, most of it coming from this crypto.
They created a crypto coin. That
has come to this point. So that's what he is about. While we're arguing, you and I are arguing about him sending.
People are giving him sainthood medals because supposedly he didn't cash his check for $400,000 annually, and the family has made $3.5 billion off of one deal.
One deal. So
and the total is $6 billion when you get them all together.
3.5 seemed like a lot to me.
It is, but that's off just the one. There's all the other ones. Not to mention golf is now probably $100 million so far, and this is the guy that was going to commit to closing waste out. But we keep saying this about the guy, and this is not a new story anymore.
It isn't a new story, but what's new is that we now have even better analogies to history. Another one, he is making the White House into Trump Towers, D.C., and putting all kinds of gold in it. And it made me think about Nero, the Roman Empire, who was ultimately killed by his own guard because he was maybe one of the worst leaders of all time. In a place like America, I mean, Rome at that time, even at his time, that they were king of the world, and you didn't mess with Rome. On the fringes, they started losing allies and getting beat in battles. But Nero built the Golden Palace in Rome. He had a lake in it. They leveled, I think it was a Janiculum Hill at the top. They put this stuff on. I may have that wrong, but he put all of this vast resources into it and used their money for that. It wasn't his money. It was the Roman people's money to do that for show. And when Rome burnt, supposedly he started the fire because he wanted to clear out more area. That's up in the air as to whether it's true or not. Is that he then blamed the Christians? He blames.
That's what it is. He blames something else.
And so who do we blame? If we're Donald Trump, we blame the people that make the beds in the hotels. We blame the people that go to work in the fields. We blame the people that work in mines and
yes, he's blamed Biden. His go-tos have been Biden, Clinton, and Obama, right?
Yeah.
But yesterday it was AI. He blamed AI for some real live film that was taken at the White House, packages going out the window.
Well,
and then they showed it to him. Then the Fox News guy, Ducey, goes up and says, well, here's the video. And he goes, oh, gosh, that's AI. You know what they can do with AI. And then he obliquely says, like in his way, like explaining, well, of course I'm going to blame AI. Blame everything on AI. That's when blame everything.
Easy to do.
Because he doesn't do one thing. You can't use the word acceptance of anything. He can't. Well, it's blame, blame, blame. And God damn it, if 70 million Americans have just fallen for that, for how long now? It's got to get over it.
Well, we do. And we also we need to keep talking about it. Again, he in a way is Nero. I mean, he is a guy that is burning down a lot of stuff, not for anybody else, because he wants to leave a monument to himself. And if you follow the end of that story, as I say, it didn't turn out well for Nero, nor did it turn out for some of Nero's advisors who were really smart men. Seneca had to kill himself or be killed by that emperor because Seneca eventually got the idea that he probably wasn't going to last any longer either. And so he did speak against Nero. Nero found out about it and ended up Seneca dying. And I have dozens of books by the Stoic, and so many of them are good. He was a wise man. He didn't practice what he preached, but what he preached was really wise, and it's amazing. And so there are a lot of them in Trump's circle as well, who one day, and I'm not talking about people being killed, they're going to lose all of the respect that they think they have because, in a sense, they've already lost.
I think the Senecas in the Trump cabinet were the first term. I don't think he has a Seneca in this cabinet.
I think that's fair. I do. I really do.
He searched by and large, spent 4 years in the planning to get only loyalists. And look, 32 of his cabinet or high appointees are from Fox Network. Good God. Since when is a person without a college degree in journalism qualified to whatever role that they exalted themselves into because of their willingness to lie in support with fealty? So anyway,
can I say one thing about him, though? Because I just picked this up, and you said you've read excerpts. Rick Riley wrote a book, Commander-in-Chief.
Yeah.
We men, and a lot of women, I mean, and I know some of the people that listen to this are golfers, and I haven't read it, but he came out with an addendum since this came out a year or so ago. Yeah. So I picked it up and I started reading it. Rick Riley is a great writer. He is a fantastic writer. If you don't know him, wrote for Sports Illustrated forever. He's written a lot of books, known in the sports writing.
Probably 80 or 90% of my favorite columnist type writers were sports page writers that were funny.
No, they're funny, but they also can turn a phrase.
They tell a story.
And they can turn a phrase. Anyway, it's called Commander-in-Chief, a bestseller with the New York Times, and there's a new paperback out. And I started reading it, and I have to say I couldn't put it down.
Oh, yeah.
Because you find out this guy will cheat his own caddy. I mean, and Riley tells the stories. You skip through it and you go, God, I've got to go get a very large beer and sit down and read this beginning to end. I won't even quote any of them, but Riley's analogy is golf is like bicycle shorts. It reveals a lot about a man.
There you go, right there. Because every time, and recently I've called out the cheat for years with this guy. He's a cheat, he's a cheat.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to what I've said before. I didn't like Trump on day one in the early 80s.
Oh, me neither.
I'm not new to this kind of side of my aisle. And he's never let me down because he's either cheated or manipulated or cajoled or lied all the way through. And that people on the way picked up on this and somehow found that attractive, I can no longer feel sorry for. But the thing of it that comes back is what we've said all along in here: ethics, honesty, tradition, values. And the core one is their cheating. If you can cheat, why would you have any expectation to succeed as a society if your leader is a cheater?
And
I don't get it. You don't hire that person into your company at any level. So you don't bring him in as an accountant. You don't bring him in as a salesman. He'll inflate the numbers. You don't bring him in to write a story because he'll tell lies and quote suspicious. He won't even attribute his people that he's quoting. He's going to get you in trouble.
Or make them up.
You don't put him in your warehouse to count your widgets because he's going to walk out the door with them or find a way to sell them. And yet we elect this guy president, and he would walk into any boardroom from a 3-person board to a 100,000-person board in America, and nobody would hire this man on his resume.
No.
But we elected him.
I know, and I think
unreal.
I think
what kind of results did you expect, America?
Well, I believe that I really believe that somehow people thought Americans, for all of our stupidity, we like second and third and fourth acts. And I mean, we do.
We like to overcome adversity.
You know, that's who I was, but that's not who I am. But Americans also love sports. And you know, one of the things that Americans don't like in sports is real cheaters. They don't, okay? And I think that people ought to read this book if you are a golfer or you love sports, because you go, if he did one of these things on the golf course with me, I'd hit him with my sand wedge. You know, but once again, as you said, we've elected him. It's time, and long past time, that we stop talking about who he is and we focus more on what he's done. But when you focus on what he's done, you've got to go back to who he is. It's not going to change.
I think, Ron, it's a different change. I think we need to. It's easy to keep on poking holes at what he did wrong from money or perspective. We're not going to change. We can. I don't think that I'm wrong about the man. I don't lose any sleep about it. I'm 100% right that this guy is not a good person, and I wouldn't want him anywhere near my children, my family, my church, my job, my parish.
Your dead dog.
My dead dog. I'm fine without the guy like in my life. What we've got to do instead, I think, is concentrate on what do we want to be, the plurality of all of us.
Yeah, we've talked
because
about that.
We are the ones that direct it. In the times of Joe Hill and Louis Tikas and John Leventis, it was always a martyr.
Yeah.
Something happened and triggered. And then just Louis Tikas, 2 seconds. Let me give you some names of martyrs if you don't mind. I don't even know where we're sitting here.
We got a few minutes.
Louis Tikas was the Greek leader in Ludlow, Colorado. And that's where the National Guard of Colorado was called out in 1914. There was the striking village there. They were all in tents, and here comes the National Guard, and they just ransacked. Louis Tikas died. He was shot in the back among his wounds. And then he was pounded over the head with a rifle butt because he did what again? He stood up for labor men.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it's a death crime, but it is in America, apparently. But here's some people who are also lost their lives on that day. Elvira Valdez, 3 months old. Eulala Valdez, 8 years old. Mary Valdez, 7 years old. Clarina Pedrigoni, 4 years old. Rigotero Pedrigoni, 6 years old. Onofrio Costa, 4 years old. Joe Perucci, 4 years old. Lucy Perucci, 2 years old. Frank Perucci, 4 months old. William Snyder, 11 years old.
No.
Those are the people that died so the governor of Colorado could be the big shot and make his name in Colorado. Or do whatever he was doing it for the people back east, the Rockefellers and everybody, so that they can continue to pay those kids' fathers 50 cents a day.
And maybe pay them as kids that worked around the
Those were the children.
For nothing.
Those were the children.
Yeah, they killed children.
And the children can possibly die again in Chicago, in D.C., in L.A. because a car burned down and somebody got pissed off.
Right.
And that doesn't call for our National Guard.
No.
Our National Guard has a real purpose, and it's not a police force.
Yeah.
And if the police in the cities have failed us, then start looking deeper, America, because those aren't Chicagoans only there. They were sent to Chicago and other so-called sanctuary cities that not just about immigration, but cities of sanctuary where rural states and rural towns kick their people out of the town and they have nowhere else to go. Walk around downtown Salt Lake City. Yeah. The people on the streets in Salt Lake City, by any name or whatever that's polite to say what they are, not homeless street people, whatever, indigent, are not students that graduated from South High School. They came from other parts of Utah, and those red parts of Utah, which they are, by the way, condemned Salt Lake City and the blue mayor of Salt Lake City and us citizens of Salt Lake City environs for not doing enough for them and being a blight.
And also restricted the money that we needed.
Took the money away. They want to rename the streets, but they won't really put the sidewalk together. So the reality is until those people can look in the mirror and say that, yeah, I'm a Christian too, and I mean it this way, and help those people, man, the National Guard isn't going to change anything until those people wake up and say, we got to hold hands here. We got to hold hands.
They do, and I think that that's a good place to end. I mean, we need to, Americans have to understand that we have problems in this country. We've tried imprisoning people in the matter of crime, and we know, and there are examples of it in Los Angeles, particularly with gang members, that if you actually give people a job, if you make sure they have a decent place to live, if they have a job, people would rather work. There are some people, remember my background. For 50 plus years, I worked in the criminal justice system defending a lot of these people. Most of these people want just a fair shake, and they want what they see advertised on TV. Well, give them an opportunity for a fair shake. Don't pay him 50 cents when you can pay him $50 a day. And also give them the opportunity to move forward and not stay stagnant in their lives.
If you want to be completely cold about it, some of the people left rural Utah left because they couldn't find jobs because of what you just said. They couldn't get paid because the guys that are hiring in those places found cheaper labor.
Exactly.
And then those people that were displaced come up here and they bring with them the problems that they had down there. Could be drugs, because there's a lot of drug manufacturing going along in a lot of red states and in rural Utah. They're bringing the guns. There's no gun manufacturing in downtown Salt Lake, but they're bringing their guns with them. The red states are great importers of guns into Chicago. That's their problem. And yet you call it a Chicago problem, but those guns are coming from the South. Where they're coming up from down there where they're easily gotten and easily used. It's not. It's a game that people don't want to admit and take any responsibility for.
I've said this on the program, and this will end it for me at least, and you can finish. America wants to stop inner city crime and rural crime, then stop doing drugs.
Right.
Okay, America, you want that. If Americans stop doing street drugs, the cartels can't do anything. We're the problem. We're a big part of the problem. I believe for our generation, I believe that, and we know what, and we've talked about my beliefs, I believe that for me and my generation, that we have a reckoning when this life is over for our involvement with the explosion of numerous kinds of drugs throughout the world. That was our generation, okay? Yeah. It's gotten worse, but we were the ones that preached it. So maybe we all should say, I'm sorry, and start preaching against it to our kids. Stop preaching about the tough guy, or as the inner city black preachers talk, stop preaching the bad motherfucker syndrome and everybody being a tough guy, because it isn't the truth in the first place, and it's likely to get you killed. But we continue to do it in America, and then two little kids were killed in Minneapolis by a guy that went in and bought an AK-47 like rifle and a gun, and within 2 weeks shot up a church and killed little kids while they were praying. And we've done nothing about it. We've done nothing about that.
We did. We said if we put guards at every door and arm the guards at the door, we're fine. That's from Sean Hannity, who didn't care for 1 second to think about those guns were fired from the outside through the windows. Yeah. So that is not the solution. Ron, we gotta not cut off. You said you were ready to, but I sent you an image last night on a text of your godmother.
Yeah.
So
we want to take a moment and honor a lady we've talked about a couple of times. Her sister was my godmother.
Her sister, okay, sorry.
Jenya Massa, and their parents lived by you in Leadmine.
Yep.
and Joanna Massa Osaro, who died this past week.
96, I believe. Something like
95, 96. And she was Highland Boy person, and the Osaros were, and we've talked about them. I'm kind of getting tired of talking about them, but I'm never tired of talking about Joanna. She was my babysitter, and she was a real supporter of the run we do for my brother, that we give the money to homeless vets in the Veterans Court. And I think she's even supported some of the things you've done, because great lady, the last one of that generation.
Yeah, I don't think there's another one any longer. I used to, when I was 20 years ago, I would hear a name of a person that's in their 90s, and I think, oh, that's the end of it. And then, of course, my mother and yours lived another 20 years. But now I don't know, just don't know who's 90s plus from that era. I'm sure they're there, and it'll come to me some. But, Joanna was one of the last ones. She used to drive by to visit her mother up in Leadmine quite often. I'd see her and wave. Her daughters, Sharon particularly, was 1 year ahead of me in high school. I'm sorry, 2 years ahead of me in high school. But, that's the touching part. Even when you're not close, you just understand that there's one more piece of that thread that held it all together that's not there any longer. And that's a great family and a great legacy they have, for sure. And I, from all the people in Bingham, just wishing everybody that feels that, and knew Joanna and all the Osoros and Masses, all the best.
Yep. I can't talk, actually.
No, I know. It's well, I think that we've said it before. What I'm happy about, Ron, and I know you are, where we came from, what we stood for. And I can look across the table and look at somebody, and I hope you can do the same, that hasn't changed hardly very much. We've been through some serious shit in our lives, but at the end of the day, what we were born into kind of stuck with us. And that might piss some people off that we speak openly, and you speak openly and educated. I give you that, God damn it. I told you, my college degree is in observation as a bartender and a blackjack dealer, and I didn't get a PhD. I got a high-level bachelor's degree intended.
We got a PhD on how to live, and we both made mistakes from people like her, who was my babysitter.
Yeah. Well, listen, to the next generation, and sad tie-in, those babies that died in Ludlow were 3 months old. People, don't forget it. When you say babysitter, that means you have lived a life to have somebody put you on their lap, and every child is entitled to sit on a lap and have a mother's eyes, a grandmother's eyes, an aunt's eyes, a tia's eyes, a thea's eyes, look them in the eye and bless them as children. And when we put a stop to that, and it's coming if we don't wise up, it's going to happen again. Babies will die, and children will die, young adults will die. It is not where we need to head, and this isn't about economics, and it isn't about stocks. It's about people. And when we gave up on people, when we allowed our systemic everything to fall apart in the hands of a cheater, we gave up on the American dream. And there's no executive order, no act of Congress, no signature on a new bill that will make America better if Americans aren't willing to accept that they have to be better by starting to live better. And it starts with the core principles that we keep on talking about, and that we both willingly admit we've failed at times. But God damn it, I'm not going to stop saying it. Okay, see you, Ron. And in the meantime, don't mourn, organize, and remember, I don't want to be found dead in Utah.
And he wasn't. He was taken to Chicago.
Of all places.
Of all places.
Full circle.
Yep.